What's going on, guys? Today we're going to rate an OU team by Elstorm, and his team is Ferrothorn, Slowbro, Dragalge, Mega Gyarados, Landorus, and Azumarill. Now, I really enjoy this offensive trope he has going on of using Dragon Dance, Mega Gyarados, and down here, Belly Drum, Azumarill to weaken each other's checks so that the other can sweep later depending on who sets up first. And in this metagame, Belly Drum, Azumarill has kind of gotten a little better compared to late X and Y. However, looking at his team, you really need to keep Belly Drum Azumarill as healthy as possible in order to set up effectively against the things that it can scare out or check or take a hit from. And noticing his team, he doesn't really have a defogger or a rapid spinner or any way to control hazards. And really his whole team would appreciate it because Gyarados does take super effective stealth rock damage on switch in. Landorus wants to preserve its natural bulk by being as healthy as possible if it wants to set up, I think his is Rock Polish. And also Dragalge wants to keep healthy in order to keep checking things like Raikou and Mega Manectric and Rotom W for the team. That's really important. So, team member that looks the most expendable right now to me is Slowbro. It really does nothing but add weaknesses to the team, and there's easily another Pokemon that can check the same things, like he said AV Conkeldurr, Keldeo, and fighting types like that, while still having the hazard control, and that Pokemon is Latias. Not Latios, Latias. And the reason Latias is really good for this team and this kind of offensive trope of having two setup mons that weaken each other's counters is that if one of those Pokemon happens to get crippled or burned or paralyzed, or if Azumarill has used up a Belly Drum and is at low health, Latias can use Healing Wish to bring that Pokemon back and possibly get another opportunity to sweep after its teammate has weakened its checks. So Latias is definitely the way to go over Slowbro, just because Slowbro is kind of a momentum sucker on your team, even if it does have Regenerator. Latias keeps up that offensive pressure, and if you want to go Mexican, you can even run Thunder Wave on it. And another reason to run Latias is that looking at your team, opposing Latios look really scary, especially those with HP Fire. And as you all know, if you're running HP Fire on Latios, you have to compromise the Speed IV. So if you run the Timid Max Speed Latias, you should be able to outspeed and revenge kill any HP Fire Latios that take out your Ferrothorn. The second suggestion I'm going to make is to use Substitute over Crunch on Gyarados. You said you used Earthquake over Taunt or Substitute for Heatran and just for a Mold Breaker on Rotom W, but really the move you kind of need to replace is Crunch. Crunch is pretty good on Mega Gyarados. It finally got it in Oras. It's a Dark type stab, but the fact is that it doesn't really get a ton of additional coverage that Earthquake and Waterfall don't already get. Because of Mold Breaker, you're already hitting Levitate users, so Latios can get hit by Earthquake, and also Earthquake just gives you most of the neutral coverage that Crunch gives you already, and Substitute facilitates the setup on Pokemon that can possibly Will-O-Wisp you like Mew or Mega Sableye, and that's really important to guarantee the sweep of Mega Gyarados. It just really facilitates that over a 3 attack set where you're not really going to be using that coverage a whole lot. And you mentioned that well, Starmie dies to Earthquake, and for Mega Slowbro you have your special wall breaker right here, which is Dragalge, which should be faster, and Ferrothorn also helps you beat Mega Slowbro. And also Landorus can break down physical walls even if they are hit slightly harder by Crunch. So in all honesty, Substitute is going to facilitate setup opportunities and help you capitalize on setup opportunities whenever you get them, instead of fearing stuff like status and not very effective attacks like Scald, which can possibly burn you, but if you're behind a sub, you can take the Scald and set up on it. For example, Alomomola, which is often seen on Stalled. The next suggestion I'm about to make is one that's a little bit more optional, but it's something that I personally like to use. It's actually Draco Play Dragalge over Choice Specs, and the reason for this being is just so it really just eases prediction. Because, especially if your opponent has a Fairy type, it's a very effective lure, especially since the standard set is already the Choice Spec set. So if you're in against a physical wall that you need a Draco Meteor, like a Rotom W or something, if they switch into like their Clefable, then you can easily just switch it up on them and use Sludge Wave if they assume that you're Choice Specs. And also because of the same prediction factor, if they think you're Choice Specs and they have their Hippowdon or something in on you, they might just want to choose to stay in, expecting you to predict when you do not have to if you're not using choice specs. And also, Draco Plate gets pretty much most of the KOs with Draco Meteor that you get with choice specs, or the ones that you really need for your team. And even if it loses out on some one-hit KOs, you're still going to get the damage needed in order to facilitate your Azumarill sweep or your Gyarados sweep late game. So it's really just the more optimal item for this team in my opinion. If you want to stick with choice specs, that's up to you, but this is just a suggestion that I am making. And lastly, it really does look like Latios is giving you a lot of trouble, and adding a Latias to your team is really not enough. And I really try to find room in your team for some kind of Pursuit Trapper, because those pair really well with Landorus, but I just couldn't. So looking at your team, I mean, you don't really need Rock Polish in my opinion. And the reason for that is that most common offensive teams get ripped apart by Belly Drum Azumarill, and Gyarados can also do some real work after it gets up a Dragon Dance. So you're really not lacking in the... Your team might be overall slower, but you're not performing any less against offense. And Knockoff really lures in Latios when they see Landorus Eye. Offensive teams, they just go straight to their Latios, and having that threat gone is really useful for your team. And it just makes Landorus that much better of a stall killer. So you're not really worrying about having the belly drum against stall if you have Landorus, because Landorus with your moveset but knockoff over Rock Polish just single-handedly annihilates stall. But if you really want to, you can actually use knockoff over the other two coverage moves as well. If you really do, if you're really adamant about using Rock Polish on Landorus Eye, you know, just for the matchup against offense. And even nowadays, teams are heading more into the bulky offense area now that Greninja has been banned. So even this set, without Rock Polish, would still do some work against the common balance archetypes. In fact, Landorus pretty much has no switch-ins on balance, so the only times where knockoff over Rock Polish is really not that optimal is against really hyper beatdown offense in which Azumarill and Gyarados in particular shine anyway. So overall, I give this team a solid 7 out of 10. It was already a pretty well-built team, but with my optimizations, it definitely has the potential to rise up to a solid 8.5 out of 10. And on my scale, 10 is like RMT archive worthy. Like, not only is it a perfect team, but it's a team that has influenced the metagame. So if I give your team like an 8 or a 7, you know, that's really good. And if any of you want to try out this new and improved team for yourselves, I have left the Importable with my suggestion in the description below. If you like this video or want your team rated, go ahead and like this video and don't be afraid to subscribe.